So, okay, let's start. Hello, everybody. My name is Lukáš Valo, and I'm from EDU Trainings. I would like to welcome you on today's data center training or data center webinar. And at the beginning of this session, I would like to introduce EDU Trainings a little bit. We are a training center covering the Czech and Slovak market. And as you can see on the first slide, we are covering all these three streams. It means we have a wide range of technical courses, soft skills courses, and online language courses with Voxy platform. Regarding the technical courses, we are the partner of almost all big players, IT players on the market. So you can see that we are providing Red Hat, VMware, Microsoft trainings. We have the official certification for ISO. And of course, we are the partner of EPI. This is the company providing authorized and certified training for data centers. And then we will have all details about the portfolio of data center trainings in a few next minutes. And I would like to also mention the soft skills courses. As you can see, we have many courses focused on the managers or middle managers, of course, for the workers in the factories. I do not introduce it in the details because you probably know all trainings like negotiations, communication skills, etc., etc. And you can see more details about all these trainings on our website. But I would like to also mention one completely new thing, and it's online language with Voxy platform. This is a completely new partnership from the beginning of 2020. And in case you would like to have English trainings, we have the portfolio, or we have the solution for online languages. This platform is working with artificial intelligence and is completely following your needs. So it means that when you will have some level of the English, this platform will check if you choose the correct level, and this platform is able to increase or decrease this level based on your needs, based on your knowledge, and based on your exercises you are doing through this platform. So this is also one completely new thing. And in case you would like to have more details, please contact us. And now I would like to introduce Simon Bestman. This guy is the industry veteran in data centers, and he would be able to help you with almost everything regarding the data centers. And we'll tell you more about the EPI, about the details of data center trainings, about the possibilities, and about all options which EPI can provide to customers. So Simon, thank you very much that you join us with this webinar, and you will conduct it. So now stage is yours, and thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Lukas, and thank you everybody for attending this webinar. My name is Simon Bestman. I'm a data center consultant. I'm a trainer. I'm in the Netherlands. I'm also the CEO of the Coalition of Cloud Providers, ISP Connect. And I'm going to be talking you through this webinar. What I'm going to do is first introduce, of course, a little bit EPI, what we are, what kind of company we are. I'll go a little bit into the data center industry, where we are now, and what we expect, and what are the challenges from the point of view of managing the human beings in the data center, and the importance of training people. Then I will talk you briefly through a number of the trainings that EPI has to offer. And then at the end of this webinar, and depending a little bit on how much time we have, I will go a little bit more into detail of one of the courses, of the CDCP course, so that you can get a little bit of a feel of what is this about, what happens actually in that course, what are we talking about. Completely at the end, I will take a few minutes also to answer questions. So you can ask your questions. You can use Teams for that, I understand. You can also use WhatsApp. Lukasz and Victor are going to collect all the questions, and they will send them to me. And so at the end of the session, I will read the questions that have been asked, and I will answer them publicly. Let's start with a little word about EPI. EPI has been around now for 33 years, starting in the UK, but nowadays the head office is in Singapore, but we are actually active in, you can see, in 11 countries around the world, with a global network a global partner network. Sorry. What we do, we are a data center company. We are a company of people with on every continent that have in common that they are experts in data centers. So what we do, we help people design data centers. We do audits of the data centers they've created. We are accredited with the ANSI TIA 942 standard. We are accredited to audit and certify, but we also design, we write, and we deliver trainings worldwide for people employed in data centers, and that's what we're going to talk about here. And the trainings, the certifications that we give with EPI have all in common that they are certified by EXIN, which is a worldwide accreditation company, and that means that all the trainings that we give have been checked, have been accredited by EXIN, and the certificates that we issue are recognized worldwide as an industry standard. So it's just not just us saying, "Oh, this is what we like." No, we are recognized worldwide, and our certifications are recognized worldwide. Why are we talking about data center training? Well, data centers are everywhere now. Data centers are growing, and data centers are going to be growing a lot more in the coming decade. We are really in the middle of a data revolution. The data growth of the past decade was driven a lot by human beings. You know, we started all doing our bank things on an app, and reading the newspaper on an app, and watching videos on our telephone. The new wave of data that is growing is much, much larger. It's machine-to-machine data. It's the data that is being created by the cars that we drive, by the machines that we use, by the houses in which we live. And certainly with the arrival of 5G, that is going to explode. Most predictions expect a growth of a multiplying between 30 and 50 times of the volume of data in the next decade. And well, all that data will have to be stored and processed somewhere, and that's where the data centers come in. So we are not at the high point of the curve in the data centers. We are just at the beginning of the curve, and we're going to see a lot of growth. And a lot of growth means also we are going to need a lot of people to manage environments that are highly complex, because a data center is an IT environment, but it's not only an IT environment. A data center is also a highly secure facility. It's a facility in which the cooling needs to be measured with great precision to assure a very constant temperature. It's an environment that has very high requirements on fire prevention, fire suppression. It's an environment where the power needs to be regulated not only in its availability, but also in the quality of the power. So the variations that you can have, and the harmonics in installations, and the common mode noise, etc. So this requires a number of fields of expertise, IT expertise, network expertise, but also mechanical engineering expertise, electrical expertise. And it's difficult to find the right people to manage this kind of environment. But if it's a data center that is not well managed, it will go down, and downtime is expensive and is costing more and more money. And you see now on this slide, right now, on average, you're talking about $2 million per hour of downtime. This is an average, but bear into account, I was recently at the data centers of Microsoft in Dublin when they ran the Azure cloud, and Microsoft estimates that 1 minute of downtime of the Azure cloud costs Microsoft $100 million. So keeping the data centers up and running is the name of the game, and is difficult and requires the right people. Because what causes downtime? Well, you see, of course, hardware failure, but look at the green chart. Human error is one of the major causes of downtime in the data center. And when I'm talking about human error, I'm not talking about people who know what they're doing and who suddenly have a moment of madness and do something completely wrong. What you're talking about mostly is people who work with processes they do not understand, people who work with processes that are not properly documented, people who have not received the right instructions, people who have not been trained properly to do their job. There's a direct link between having well-trained people with good work instructions and having a high uptime. And the market is growing fast. Here in EMEA, as you can see, the aggregated growth rate last year is 11%, and we're expecting the market to keep on growing. And as I think you've also experienced in Czech and Slovak, that now with the COVID crisis, suddenly everybody went to work from home. And I haven't seen your figures, but I'm based in the Netherlands, and here in the Netherlands, we saw certainly all the cloud providers saw a 40% increase of the use of their networks during the daytime, and that is very difficult to manage. That's put a lot of strain on everybody's resources, on all the data centers. We need to manage that. Now, the challenge is that we hire mostly people with an IT background, but IT educations do not cover data center knowledge. They teach people IT, they teach people Microsoft, they teach people VMware, they teach people networks, but they do not teach people how to run the complex operation of a data center, which is IT, but also non-IT. And getting the knowledge in your organization is an essential part of being able to manage this environment and to be able to manage also the growth that you expect. So that's where IPI comes in, actually. We have a data center training framework that's based, as you can see, on 3 different pillars. We have a design and build pillar here on the left, based on the CDCP. I will come in a few minutes in what CDCP is. It's the the training actually that most people follow. It's a basic training of 2 days for the data center professional, and which on that path you can go on to the certification of a data center expert. I'll come back on that also in a minute on what that means. These are the design and build side. But we also have a large volume on governance and operations. So these are trainings that are not technical, but that are based towards the processes in the data center, the CDFOS, CDFOM, but also the certified data center risk professional, the migration specialists, are based on best practices, are based on how do you organize the staging process in the best possible way to make sure that you are always able to stage your IT in the allocated time with the minimum number of errors. Where do you put the responsibilities in the data center? How do you do the documentation of the data center? What are the best practices on security? These are covered in the governance and operation track. And then we have a standards and compliance track based very much on the intricacies of the TIA 942 standard. So, which the people who follow this typically learn how to become consultants of the design, how to work with the contractors to make sure that the data centers that are being built are compliant with the standards and are built following the best standard. I want to take a few minutes to go into the curricula of a few of these courses. We don't have time to do them all, but I want to go into them. The first one is the DCFC. You see him in this slide. I'm going to turn one side. You see it here at the bottom. DCFC is a course that we've introduced this year, actually, and it's a foundation course. It's a data center foundation course. This is a course that is meant for people who are going to have to work in a data center environment and who do not have any previous knowledge or experience of a data center. Or a lot of people who have registered for these trainings are, for instance, people who work in sales and who have to be able to talk about the data center with their customers and their stakeholders, and so who need to have a basic knowledge of what a data center is and what it does. So that it's an entry-level course. There is no prerequisite. Anyone can come into it, from people who just come out of school or people just entering the industry. But also it's very much used now for to retraining programs of job seekers, for instance. But also, as I said, for people who work in sales support, people who work in management, who are not directly related to the data center, but who have a data center in their portfolio and need to have some knowledge of what is happening there and what are the KPIs to keep the data center operational. This is a two-day course that we've designed so that with a relatively easy exam, also and a relatively easy certification, to make sure that people can quite easily in 2 days really get up to par with their knowledge of the data center. So the curriculum will be a global overview of what a data center is, what happens in there, what are some of the technical aspects, what are some of the operational aspects, what are some of the market aspects, a proper introduction. Very practical. The trainers that give this training are also, they're all people like me, people who have been in this industry for 20 plus years. And that's, in my view, that is an advantage of the trainings that we give, that all the trainings are given by people who have a lot of practical experience, who have been in data centers, in hundreds of data centers, and who can not only help you compare the setup of your own data center with the industry standards, but who can also make the course more alive because we all have a lot of anecdotes, a lot of examples from things that we've seen in our long practice. So there is an exam of 40 questions. You need 24 to pass. The exam is relatively easy. The intention of this exam is not to put people on the grill. The intention of the exam is simply to see whether they've understood what has been discussed in the course. It's a course that I would recommend to people for new starters in the organization, but also for people who are in your organization who don't have a day-to-day involvement with the data center, but who need to have some information, some knowledge about the data center that is part of your company. That was the DCFC. The next one that I want to talk about is the design and build portfolio. So where we start with the CDCP, Certified Data Center Professional, and only if you have passed the exam for CDCP can you take CDCS, Certified Data Center Specialist, and here again, only if you have received the certification CDCS will you be allowed to take the exam for the CDCE, the Certified Data Center Expert. I'll walk you through it quickly. CDCP, I told you already, this is the course that EPI sells most, is the course that a lot of people register for. Why? Because it's so complete. It's a 2-day course which does not have a prerequisite. You don't need to have a prior certificate. The CDCP is a long tour through the data center where in 2 days we stop at all the fundamental aspects that are required to have the data center running. So we go on the principles of cooling. We look at the various technologies of cooling. We look at how to build redundancy from an electrical point of view and what is required in the electrical installation, the definitions of power quality. We look at UPSs, but we also look at fire suppression. We look at security installations. We look at raised floors and ceilings. We look at light. Right? Of course, in 2 days, excuse me, in 2 days we cannot always go through everything in very deep detail. We have a CDCS and a CDCE for that, but CDCP, it's a pretty heavy course. It's hard work to follow the CDCP, but after 2 days, the candidates who have followed the CDCP have a serious basic knowledge of all the aspects from site selections to electrical to mechanical to telecoms, networks, operational matters. They are able to spar with contractors. They are able to instruct their colleagues on things that are not being done according to the best practices. They know which standards apply. What you're seeing now more and more is also that commercial data centers are using CDCP as a label of quality. It's one of the differentiators that they use in the market to say, well, every engineer that we have on the floor of the data center has a CDCP certification. That way the customers know also that the people working on the floor of the data center are people who know what they're talking about, who have been trained properly and who have passed the test. The test here is also 40 questions, multiple choice, closed book, 1 hour, and this means in the case of Czech and Slovak, 1.5 hours, because non-native speakers of English get more time. You need 27 correct answers, and you have to pay attention during the course because it's not a very easy test. It's not an easy course, but it's a course that is extremely valuable. When people have done the CDCP, about 1/3 of the people who have passed CDCP decide to go on and learn more in the CDCS, the Certified Data Center Specialist. This is a course, it's a 3-day course, and it covers essentially the same aspects, but in much more detail. We take it in the CDCS where we left it in the CDCP. So in the CDCS, we will go over the same topics, but if you want, in the CDCP, we talk about what the different types of batteries are that you can use and what are the pros and cons of each type. In the CDCS, we'll go look at how you calculate the size of your battery bank. In the CDCP, we talk about electromagnetic fields and what are the standards that are acceptable. In the CDCS, we look at how do you manage attenuation of electromagnetic fields. So it goes in a lot more details. That's why it's a 3-day course also. But the candidate who has successfully passed the CDCS should be capable of managing the vendors in the construction of the data center by reviewing the proposed equipment, by comparing it with the various standards. He will know which standards apply to which kind of things. He will know what the best practices are. He will know when his contractor is going on the wrong track. So this is for people who have probably a little bit more senior position in the data center, or for people working in the data center of which you as an employer think this is somebody who can grow further, who has the capabilities to take on more responsibilities. In order to get the CDCS certificate, you must have the CDCP. So you cannot simply say, I want to skip CDCP and now go CDCS. You have to do one first the first, then the other. The exam is also a bit more complex. You have more time, more questions, 60 questions, 45 correct to pass. It's complex, but in my experience as a trainer, I would actually say that the pass rate is very high, because normally you have a little bit more time. You have 3 days, and the people who are taking the CDCS course are normally people who also understand what they're talking about, who know what they're talking about, who are of course also always very motivated. So the pass rate is pretty high. And then the third step in this track would be the Certified Data Center Expert. Now this is a course that is a smaller percentage of people take it. You need, of course, to have had a CDCS to do it. There's a typo here. It says prerequisite CDC, but prerequisite is CDCS. And you go into a 5-day course where you literally go and develop your own data center project with the instructor. So you're going to be taken through the entire life cycle, starting from the design to the whole build project, so including scoping it, including making all the design calculations, doing the proper site location review, doing a design review, selecting equipment, doing the testing, doing the commissioning. So it's a very practical class. You spend 60% of the time doing cases where you have to show that you're capable of doing. It's a super interesting class, but it's a full week. There's 2 exams actually. So it's not for everybody. You would not want to send every junior engineer to a data center expert training. But for a few select people in your organization that you really need to have this expertise, this is the place to go. 5 days course using knowledge acquired already in the previous trainings, and you're going to at the end of this course, the students will by right call themselves experts. Now I want to touch on a couple of trainings from the governance and operation training. We don't have time to go through the whole lot. I want to touch on first also a new training that we've made called the CDFOS, the Certified Data Center Facilities Operation Specialist. This is a 3-day course that is meant for people who work in the data center, who work on the floor of the data center. And it covers, it's not a technical course, mind you, this is an operational course. So in the 3 days, we're going to talk about aspects that have to do with running the data center day to day. We're going to spend a lot of time on maintenance. For instance, how do you make the maintenance plans? How do you decide what type of maintenance to apply for what? But we're also going to spend a lot of time talking about staging. What is from the moment a truck arrives at the gate until the moment a server is in a rack purring along and the asset list has been updated, what are the steps that should take place and on which way should they be taking place and how do we document them? It talks a lot also about managing safety in the data center. What are the proper processes to make sure that you can do complicated, sometimes risky things in the safest possible way? How do you know that it's the moment you do also works, the moment you do maintenance, the moment you do changes in a data center, those are the riskiest moments for downtime. Those are the moments where downtime happen. And by having the proper processes in place, you can reduce the risk. You can help your data center do complicated things without having the fear that you're going to end up doing something catastrophic and having downtime. But this is a course that is really made for the people who work on the floor. It's a 3-day course, here also with an exam of 1.5 hours, which again for Czech and Slovak would be longer because you have more time if you're not a native English speaker, and 60 questions at the end, 45 correct to pass. The exam is, I would not say very scary. The exam is designed in such a way that if you've paid attention, if you've understood mostly what was taught to you, then you should pass without problem. And the other course is a course that we've had for some years already, and it's always a very popular course. It's the CDFOM, the Certified Data Center Facilities Operation Manager. This is a 3-day course, also, and as you see, the previous one was called Certified Data Center Facilities Operation Specialist. This one is called Certified Data Center Facilities Operation Manager. What is it? Allow me to have a quick sip of coffee. I'm a little bit thirsty. What is it? It's also a 3-day course, also very operational, based on running the operation, not a technical one, but this course is much more oriented for people at management level. So what we are going to discuss in this course is how to set up the data center organization. What are the aspects that should be covered? What are the best practices for setting up the organization chart? And what type of activities would you have each division, each department in the data center covering it? We talk also of managing people. We talk about managing trainings, but also how to make personal development plans with people, how to set up, what are the best practices to set up the review of people and to give your staff KPIs that they can actually meet and how to help them do that. We talk about the best practice for setting up a document management system. This is a super important one because, as you all know, in almost every data center in the world, documentation is out of date, or at least part of it is out of date. And it's very hard, of course, to be fully up to date all the time, but a strong document management process is a very good way to help you. We talk also about the life cycle of the data center, the life cycle of the equipment. We talk about vendor management, how to set up RFIs, RFPs, how to set up the sourcing process, and after the sourcing process, how to set up the contract management, and in the long term, how to structure the relation between the data center and its vendors. We spend a lot of time also talking about SLAs, how to set up an SLA in the best possible way. What should be in your SLA? What are the mistakes that people make with SLAs? And I assure you that if you send people to this course, they will come back and be very critical of the SLAs that you use in your organization. That's my experience. I would almost say the purpose of a CDFON is that at the end of this course, the people who have followed it, the candidates, will go back to their own organization, taking the course book with them, and be able to look very critical at the processes that they have in their own organization, compare them with the best practices that they've learned in the course, and that way be able to bring improvements in the organization that they came from. This is, not surprisingly, this is a very popular course. It's also a course that I enjoy teaching, because you, as a trainer, you also learn a lot, and it's always very nice to see the interaction between the students, comparing what's in their respective data centers, and seeing the possibilities to improve. It's the exam is 1.5 hours, again, 60 questions. Here also a very logical exam. If you've understood the course, you pass the exam. The passing rate is, at least with my students, is pretty high. This was it. We have a lot of other courses, but I wanted to focus also a little bit on the courses that we have now in the planning of EDU Trainings. So I want to go with you through a few slides from the CDCP set that I selected to give you a little bit more a feel of what's happening in that training. What do we actually discuss in that training? What will my staff learn when they go to this course? So this is one set from quite the beginning, where we talk about redundancy levels, the TIA 942 redundancy levels, which on power and cooling are aligned with the tier levels of Uptime Institute that you may be also familiar with. So on power and cooling, rated 1, rated 2, rated 3, rated 4 is comparable with tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. Mind you, the TIA 942 standard is much broader than just power and cooling. But we go in this slide a little bit in the detail of what does this mean, and how do you set up what is the difference between a rated 2 data center, where you have one pass for power and cooling, and redundancy at component level, so a redundant UPS, for instance, redundant air conditioners, and a rated 3 data center, where you introduce concepts like the concurrent maintainability. So the rated 3, very practically, it means a data center has a feed A and a feed B, and a redundancy on every pass. So we look also at how you set this up. How do you achieve this concurrent maintainability, which means that you are able to take one entire pass out of service without causing an interruption to the IT equipment. So we go into detail of this. I usually take the whiteboard and make some drawings, and we look at the impact that it will have on the availability of the data center, on the uptime that you're able to guarantee your users, but also at the limitations of it, in the sense that a rated 3 data center with a low level of maintenance is probably going to have a lower uptime than a rated 2 data center with a very high quality maintenance. Another side that I've chosen here, we go in the training in quite a bit of detail on what are the things to look out for when you're going to choose a location and a building. How do you do the due diligence, if you want, on the location to choose what are the elements that you want to take into consideration? How do you analyze the risks? How do you make an assessment of the risks that come with each location and with each building? And how do you assess also the possible hidden costs that you will have when you come in that? This is pretty useful stuff to understand what makes a data center environment so different from a regular IT environment. This slide I chose because here we're talking about floors, actually. We're talking about raised floors. And I'm sure many of you are working with raised floors. They're still the standard. And we have a few, we spend about an hour in the course on looking at the raised floor and looking at what are the best practices for building it? How do you set it up? How do you build it? But also, like in the case of this slide, how do you manage weight on the floor? What is the difference on this case between the distributed load, the load that you have on the floor that is a weight that is distributed on a number of tiles, and what you call the point load, a load where all the downward force of the weight is being put on 4 small points of 25 square millimeters. And these are important things to understand and to be able to take into consideration when managing the data center. Because you don't always have a structural engineer present on the floor. You will often need to do a number of things yourself, and for that you need to understand these concepts very well. The next slide that I've selected is one that goes about UPSs. It's one thing to tell the students, well, look, these are the various types of UPSs that you have, but in order to be complete, in order to really give the proper information, the people on the data center need to understand exactly what is happening in a UPS. How does it work? What is the role of the various elements of a UPS, and what kind of inefficiencies can be in those various parts? So this diagram shows actually how a VFI class UPS works, and with the double conversion. If you look at the slide, you'll see the blue arrow shows the normal mode of operation, where you can see the entire AC input from the grid is being put through a rectifier and will be converted. The rectifier is a device that will convert alternative current to direct current, and the full load will then always be on the inverter again, the inverter which does a conversion again from direct current to alternative current, from DC to AC. And it's this double conversion, as it's called, so first AC to DC and then DC back to AC, that is what allows this type of UPSs to have at the output a full control over the sine wave it creates, and to guarantee always that the power quality will be within the specs required by the IT equipment. So we spend a bit of time in the CDCP going into the detail of this, so that students really understand not only what basically a UPS does, but what is actually happening inside there, and what do you have to pay attention to, and what do you have to take into account when you calculate your batteries, your battery bank, and you want to know what the output is. How do you know what the inefficiency is that you will have at the level of the inverter, for instance? This is the kind it's nitty-gritty detail, but it's the details that count. The devil is in the details. Of course, a hot topic in the past few years is in cooling is that data centers are migrating to enclosed environments, to cubes, closed corridors, closed cold aisles, closed hot aisles. And in the course, we stop a little bit at not only what the differences are, but what are the consequences of each choice for the setup of the data center, but also ultimately for the power consumption that you have, for the cooling needs that you will have, for the fire suppression that you have. You can imagine, if you look at the drawing on the left, if you have your whole fire suppression going along the ceiling, and now suddenly you're putting a roof on the corridors, you're going to have to completely review your fire suppression. These are important elements that you need to understand deeply in order to make the right choices for your data center. When should you apply cold air containment? When should you apply hot air containment? These are points that we treat, and where we also take the time to talk about the experiences of the trainers, but also to compare the experience of the students, compare their situation, discuss the situation in their own data center, so that people come back with a full knowledge and a full understanding of what this kind of new approaches to cooling mean, and what is best for their environment and how best to manage that. So this is also very valuable stuff. The last slide that I chose to talk from this, because I want to keep a little bit of time for questions also, is a slide where we go a little bit into the requirements of the standard, and particularly TIA 942. Many of you will know that TIA 942, TIA is, of course, the Telecom Infrastructure Association. The standard TIA 942 was designed as a standard for telecommunications in the data center. And nowadays, the standard has developed also around mechanical, around architecture, around safety, around fire suppression, etc. But the telecom infrastructure is still at the heart of the standard. And as you want to have a higher rating, and as your data center increases in mission criticality, you need to build more redundancy, more resilience in the telecom infrastructure. So in the training, we look a little bit at the detail of that, and also at what the consequences are. And this is one of the reasons why, for instance, it's sometimes cheaper to build two rated 2 data centers and mirror them than to build one rated 4 data center, because these requirements, these demands on redundancy can have very far-fetching consequences, and it's very important to have a very good visibility on it, and that's one of the aspects that the training provides. This was it for my slides. I want to quickly show you what the trainings are that are available in for the customers of EDU Trainings in the coming months. We have on the 22nd of June, and on the 28th of September, we have virtual classes for the CDCP. Virtual means that instead of being in the classroom altogether, the instructor, that can be me, that can be one of my colleagues, is sitting in front of a screen, and so are the students. This is, we've of course been doing this a lot lately with the whole COVID situation, and I have to say I'm quite happy with it. I was personally a little bit afraid that not having my students in the class would impact negatively the training experience, and I've been very pleasantly surprised with it. Actually, virtual trainings work very well. You can also register people without fear, because we have temporarily also EPI has put in a provision that if you send somebody to a virtual class and they are not satisfied with the learning experience, then at no cost they can register for a real life class later. And we have a real life class scheduled in Prague on the 22nd of September. CDCS, we have a virtual session on the 24th of June, and on the 30th of September, we have a session planned in Prague. And then we have a Certified Data Center Facilities Operation Manager, CDFOM, planned virtually on the 29th of June, and face-to-face 23rd of September in Prague, and then another session on the 5th of October. The CDFOS, the Certified Data Center Facilities Operation Specialist, we will be offering as a virtual class. We are still working on the date, but we are aiming for the end of August to schedule one. And of course, EDU Trainings will communicate to you the date as soon as a decision has been made on that. We're still working on that. And then we have auditor and design consultant classes, so the CTIA and the CTDC, which are a little bit more specialized for people who are really going in the TIA 942 consultancy and auditing, planned in July 23 and 27 July as virtual classes also. That was it from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm now unlocking my phone to see if I have any questions already in the WhatsApp. I don't have any right now. Lukasz, do you have any questions from the audience? I think Lukasz is not hearing me. If you have any questions, you can submit them now. They will come from me. We still have a few minutes, so I'm happy to take them. I'm getting a message that says, "Just a moment." So I'm waiting patiently. I see that there's no questions from you. I remain at your disposal. If you have questions later on, you can address them to EDU Trainings. If it's questions concerning the schedule of the classes or the commercial aspects, EDU Trainings can, of course, answer them. If it's questions pertaining to the content of the trainings, then they will forward them to me, and I will be happy to answer them for you. As for now, I want to thank you all very much for attending this webinar. Thank you. Goodbye.